On today's video, I'm giving you my entire content creation process fully leaked. I'm very excited to debut this episode today because there's a guide to go along with it. There's all the steps listed there. And no matter what you have for content right now, this should be really insightful for at least a goal for you to get to. Because once you have a content creation process, which is essentially a means of you creating one core piece of content and then it multiplying into content for all the other social media platforms. Like I mentioned, we have a guide to go along with the material today. So grab it if you think it would be helpful to you to reference this, but I'm going to be describing each step as we go. So the first step of the content creation process is research. And this is a pretty quick process. I just use a program like Keywords Everywhere. You will want the paid version of this, which is a very cheap program. It will make it so it shows you the exact search volume on certain key phrases on YouTube. And then by that, you can kind of gauge what content you should come out with, or if you already know what content you want to come out with, exactly how you should title it. Now, the reason why this is at the very start is because once you know exactly how you're going to title it, then you can make sure that you include that title at the start of your video and mention these words throughout the video, because YouTube actually transcribes everything you say, especially in that first minute. So because I want to rank on content creation process, I started this video by saying the words content creation process so that YouTube would transcribe that and it would help me actually rank on that. So you want to make sure that the main key phrase that you're going for, you actually say in the first 60 seconds of your video on YouTube, which means that you'll have to have that planned in advance. So that's why research is first. The second phase for me, and a lot of these can be moved around one or two, but I would say if you need a content creation process, just do it my way and then go back through and then make some tweaks based off of how you personally like to work. But I take a picture for the YouTube thumbnail, partly because once I get done recording, I'm usually so finally ready to be done and just get it edited and get it out that I forget about the thumbnail completely, and then I just have to grab a screen recording, like a screen capture from somewhere in the video, but it just usually doesn't turn out as well as an actually planned thumbnail. So I do it right then, and then this also gives me a little bit more insight how I'm going to propose the whole thing and potentially use like a cliffhanger with the YouTube thumbnail. And then once I know that, that might even play into how you do the episode. So it's just good to do in advance, but you're just taking the picture here. You're not making the thumbnail. I just take the 20 pictures because that's how many I usually need to take. I like to have the options though, but that is step 2. And then the third step is recording the podcast intro. This is another just personal preference. The reason why I do this is because it's a very short audio bit, and recording a podcast intro isn't that hard because the first little bit of it is planned. I say the same thing every time, and this is the way that I can get warmed up. So I just record the podcast intro up until the point where I say, all right, let's get into the episode, right? So I give a little bit of an intro. I might address my audience and my podcast listeners, and then I will just say, all right, let's get into the episode, and then I will cut it right there. And then that will be my way of getting a little bit of a warm up before I start recording the YouTube video too. Then step 4 is recording a full length video with respect to the YouTube audience. So I do an intro, the whole content, the core piece of content, and then an outro as if I'm addressing the YouTube audience. And then step 5 is recording a separate outro for the podcast. Maybe I'll say, hey, I'll talk to you next Monday because I have a very consistent schedule for the podcast, just something slightly different. So now everything's recorded. Step number 6 is doing a first pass through edit. So I go through and I edit with respect to putting out the podcast. So just the audio. So I'll enhance the audio, put on like a compressor, some noise removal, and I will edit out some redundancy and auditory pauses like ums and anything that I don't think is necessary, and then I will sync it up with the podcast music, and then I will export that and then publish the podcast episode. So that, of course, includes writing the descriptions for the podcast episode, doing the tags, and scheduling it for a release. I'm usually scheduling a day before right now, but yeah, just scheduling the episode, if not publishing it right then, if that's how you do it. Moving on to step number 8, and this one's really optional, and I just started doing this, and I use something called Pod Pages, but what it does is it takes a transcription from your video or your podcast audio, and then it turns it into a blog post and auto publishes it on a website so that it can hopefully get picked up by Google. And it's got a decent chance because you say a lot of words and it's going to make a very long article, and it's a way better chance than if you put out no article. So I think at the minimum, I would definitely just do pod pages automatic. And then they have a lot of more advanced versions of it where it tries to SEO it a lot better. And I think that would honestly be a pretty damn good strategy, because any kind of automated scaling of your content is awesome, right? Most of it has to be delegated, but if you can do it automated and it actually work and create trending content, then one of the best things you can always do. Moving on to step number 9 is a second pass-through edit. So going back to the video, and it's already been edited to go to the podcast audio. Now I'm going to remove all the podcast audio and the music, and then I'm going to design it so that it's ready for YouTube. Now, YouTube is usually going to be a lot quicker pace, especially because it's a colder audience, so I'm not going to go off on tangents and say stories. And podcasts, people like to drive while they listen or do chores, so you can be a little bit slower with your delivery. But YouTube, if I have a 20-minute raw recording, how it usually breaks down is that podcast will be 18 minutes, and then the video will be anywhere between 12 to 15 minutes. If I kill it, it's all really relevant content, I'm just going to keep it in there. If I feel like it could be reduced and the video do a lot better, then I'm going to do that. So the second pass-through edit is to eliminate more redundancy, as well as add the visual aids that would go into a YouTube video, the text, anything like that, the outro slides, if you're going to add cards, anything specific to the YouTube goes through the second pass-through edit. And by the way, I'll just mention right now, obviously any part of this you can do or you can delegate, but we'll talk a little bit more about delegating these processes and where I would start delegating at the end of the process here. So step number 10 is creating the thumbnail. And I usually do this while the video is exporting. So once it's all done editing and you export it, and it's still going to take 45 minutes to an hour and a half to export the whole thing, create the thumbnail, get the YouTube all ready to go, and then you will be uploading the YouTube video while you create the description. So you can copy the description over from the podcast and maybe make a little bit of tweaks to it. The other thing you want to do to your YouTube videos to really help them out is to do chapters. So chapters is where in the description of a YouTube video, you just write chapters, colon, you go down to the next line, you put 0:00, and then you write your chapter, so that if you're watching a YouTube video, you can reference just my timeline on this video. It will show you the different breakdowns of the chapters of this video, and it's just essentially so people can jump around. But you can really make some keyword dense chapters, and it really helps the videos get a lot more impressions. So that's just a quick tip for you. I'm not going to dive into YouTube publishing tips. That's another video for another time though, so make sure you're subscribed. And so you're just going to publish the YouTube video. Step number 12 is an email. So you create an email about whatever topic of video that you put out, and you add some real value in that email. And then you also create a link at the bottom that will link to either the podcast episode or the YouTube, and say if you would like to learn more, then here you go. So now you got an email content out of it. And since you've already done, the full length episode, you have already broken it down into tips and everything. You're going to be able to write that email really easily at this point because you're so familiar with the content and you've already, made it. And step number 13 is editing 9:16 vertical video clips that are less than 60 seconds for social media. So making the Reels, the TikToks, Snapchat Spotlight, the YouTube Shorts, we are creating the 9:16 content. Now, the other thing you could do here that was more popular in the past before Reels and TikTok were a thing is that people would make infographics out of quotes of what they said. So they would take those podcast blog transcriptions, and then they would go through either them or an assistant and try to find quotes from the episode and turn that into infographics. When Instagram was more of a photo app, that was a better strategy. Now, if you can turn it into Reels, the upside is so much higher. But I do want to mention that here is where you'd have the option to either turn your text into images or turn your videos into short form video clips. So moving along with the Reel strategy, I prefer to then upload it to Reels. Now, what I'd say is I know a lot of people prefer the TikTok video editor. And if you want to bring it over to TikTok first, edit it in there, and then try to move it on to Reels after because you want to use some of the TikTok editing. The reason why I don't do that is because you have to save it with the TikTok watermark, or you have to post it and then copy that link and then use a TikTok downloader that downloads it without the watermark. So that would be apps like SnapTik, or there's a bunch of them. If you just type in like TikTok downloader on the App Store, or snaptik.app is another one that I really prefer. These are just ways to download TikToks without the watermark. They massively reduce the quality of the video. And then when you move it over to Instagram is extremely picky with the quality of the video compared to any of the other apps, that I don't like to do that. So I like to start it on Reels. One of the reasons why is because I like the filters better. I like to do that, and I like to add like the GIFs potentially to go along with what I'm saying. And then if you click save video at the top of a reel while you're editing, it will save that video in max quality with no watermark. The catch is you can't add audio yet. If you add audio to it, it will save with no audio at all, whether it be the song or you talking. And if you publish it and then download it, it will be with a Reels watermark. So what I do is, like, once you edit it in Reels, if you just save the video without the music added, then you will get the max quality version with whatever filters and GIFs you want to apply. So that's why I go to Reels first, and that might pertain to a lot of you. As long as you understand the reasoning here, you can make the decision that's best for you. And then, as you can guess, then I post it to Reels, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, wherever else it makes sense, and that would be the entire content creation process there. Now, the last little bonus tip I'll give you is, if you are trying to delegate a process, which part of it should you delegate first? I would look at what are you worst at, okay? So is there any part of this that you can delegate that someone could come in and do it way better than you? And in a lot of cases, this is actually not yes, especially some of the editing, like, of your podcast. There's a lot of times where it would be harder to hire someone to know exactly how you want to edit your podcast, like as good as you, right? There's a lot of these jobs that would be hard. So if you're bad at graphic design, maybe you rule towards, like, maybe you have someone make your thumbnails for you. The other thing that you would ask yourself is, if you're like, all right, I'm sufficient at the skill set to do all of this, what part of this am I not doing? Whatever part of the process that you are not consistently getting done, whether you can do it or not, would be the next thing that I would delegate. So delegating is, again, an episode for another time. So if you enjoyed today's podcast or YouTube video, wherever you're watching, make sure you're subscribed, and I appreciate you watching. Hopefully you got some great value. And again, that guide is in the description, so feel free to reference that or come back to this video whenever you need a little bit of extra help, or DM me at socialbamboo with an underscore at the end if you have specific questions. All right, see you next time.